So when Trump came out and said, "Why are we subsidizing you so much money? We should just make you the 51st state."
Mm-hmm.
And I know of about 8 Canadians. Several of them are dual citizenship. They're like, "That's an awesome idea. Fuck that place. It's the hat of America anyway."
Yeah. And as long as you're a Commonwealth of the UK, you're essentially the UK Part 2 electric boogaloo. And we know that what's going on in the UK. They're about as illegitimate as a sitting government can get now.
Yeah. Oh, no question there. I mean, when you're getting arrested for thinking bad thoughts, like that's really, really bad. So yeah, Commonwealth stuff not so applicable. The real thing that you want to ask about is the difference in politics between East and West.
Okay.
So the easiest way to explain that is think of your Democrat states, which are mostly coastal, versus your Republican states, which are mostly interior. That's kind of the East versus West. The East they're the more liberal thinkers, and out in the West here, especially in the prairies, not all the way to the west to BC, which is more like California, but out here in the West, we're the conservative types, Republican types, that kind of like want to take care of stuff. Now, generally, this isn't too big of a problem, but now it has become a very big problem. The problem started when Trudeau got in. It started a long time before that, but got exacerbated because how those guys got elected was very similar to the Democrats down south there. They elect on a program of fear. In this case, the fear of climate change to start with. So other ones, but let's just keep it with climate change just to keep on topic.
All right.
So to understand, to rule in Canada, you need to have a majority of the seats in the House of Commons, which is similar to your Congress. Same idea. So you have to elect a number of member of parliament, which is like a congressman. Okay, how you do that? Well, most of them are in Ontario and Quebec, which is out east. So how do you appeal to those people? Those are the people who you're scaring with climate change. And those people say, oh, we got to do something about climate change. Well, what should we do? Well, we should hobble our oil and gas. Because if we do that, the 1.5% that Canada contributes to the whole world thing will save the world then. Okay, so you get elected by making sure that those people are happy because it doesn't affect them. It affects us out here out west because now you hobble our oil and gas industry. You say you can only produce so much. You can only have so much emissions. You're going to have to pay so much tax for so much emission, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. To make it even more fun, Trudeau's environmental minister was Stephen Guilbeault, who used to be with Greenpeace and was arrested doing stunts for Greenpeace. This guy's a psycho eco guy. And so they kept pounding at our industries out here. And we're just going, okay, this has got to stop. So not too long ago, we elected a premier here, which would be like a governor down there, who is like, okay, we're not putting up with this anymore, and started to say, okay, we're going to make moves not to necessarily separate Alberta, but to start insulating it from what's really federal overreach, right? Because the federal government should not have a say in how we manage our resources, but by doing that stuff through the back door, pardon the word, is that they are controlling what we're doing, right? And so that's just coming into a big fight. And so this was how this was all starting to happen. It was really because of Trudeau and all kinds of stuff just to throw stuff on the fire. Remember a couple years ago, Japan and Germany coming to us say, hey, man, can you sell us some light natural gas? Which would have been great if we could get it to the market, and then would have been good for them, good for us. And Trudeau says, yeah, no, we can't do that. So instead, they get it from everywhere else. And meanwhile, again, it hobbles our industry because it appeals to the Eastern voters. Yeah. So you see how this is going.
Yep.
All right. So we were all sitting here going, okay, Trudeau screwed up so much. Everybody hates him so much. He's got to finally go. And we were looking forward to this. And in early January, he says that he's going to finally quit. And we're like, yes, they were going to have an election here soon. We'll elect the Conservatives, which is the right-wing party up here. Although really, compared to you guys, it's very centralist. So anyway, at least it's not crazy left. So we're going to elect these guys so we can get our industry going again. And then two things happen all at once.
And then
they have a leadership race for the Liberals because Trudeau's quitting, and they bring in Carney. And I will talk all about this guy in a second. And at the same time, Trump takes over down south and starts saying this stuff like the 51st state and the waffling back and forth on the tariffs, and then this tariff and that tariff that. And then So remember, those Eastern voters vote based on fear, right?
Uh-huh.
So now they got something else to be scared about. Trump's coming up here to make us Americans. Trump's coming up here to destroy our economy, blah, 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 blah. So they start freaking out about all this stuff, and they go back to the same party that's been wrecking this country for the past 10 years. Because obviously, because they have Mark Carney there now instead of Trudeau, it's completely changed, right? So now these guys will be awesome. And so whereas Polyev, who's our candidate for that right-wing party, was way up here, and the Liberals down here, polls completely go the other way. And now it looks like they are going to, if an election were to be held today, and you could believe the polls, which I don't necessarily do, we can talk about that later, then they'd elect the crazy left-wing party, the Liberals, again to do more damage. So that's where we're looking at right now. And again, they've played upon a fear thing. And so the problem now is, first of all, it's like when your mom says, hey, I'm going to buy you some ice cream, and then decides to change your mind. That's how we all feel. I thought we were going to get a conservative government, and now we're going to get a liberal government to make it worse again. So everybody down here is very, very, very upset with what's going on. If it happens, so to answer your question, we're getting there. Just give me a second. If it does happen that we elect a liberal government, and they keep on with their environmental policies of hobbling our oil and gas industry like they have done so far, and there's no indication that they won't, Alberta will have to make moves to go towards independence, if for nothing else, to save our economy. And if that should happen, that is going to prompt a constitutional crisis, which could lead to us leaving. And we're probably not going to leave on our own. So what does that end up with? There's a lot of talk around here of joining the United States.
All right. Side note.
Welcome with open arms, brother.
Do you have any idea how many actual combat aircraft Canada has?
Yes.
Since you're a fighter pilot?
Well, yes. Well, I did.
What do you think would happen if the United States just said, you know what? I think we're going to go north and just start fucking you guys up. What would you be able to do about it?
First of all, if that were happening here, like, for example, if you mobilized Montana National Guard and just started coming north the border, we'd probably help them.
All right. That's good, because I don't want to hurt anybody. I just want your beer.
Now,
I want your syrup.
Now, I don't think it's funny to talk about. It's never going to go down that way again, because it's all about ROI, right? Yeah. And so what would the whole 51st state thing is just, to agitate those idiots out east who can't think for themselves and get fearful of something. As just negotiation. Yeah. But what is real is, like I say, being able to get our oil to market. And if we can't do that, we're going to have to find out some kind of partner that we can do that with. And guess what? That's you.
So is
real Eastern, baby drill.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's in Eastern Canada where they speak frog.
So that's
Surrender monkey.
So you got Ontario and Quebec, and it is Quebec that does that. Yes.
Quebec.
Yeah, because
it should be Queerbec now.
Yeah, because I've been over. I used to kickbox out in Canada, out in Toronto, and some other cities. I don't remember their names. But every now and again, they have people like walk up and talk to me in like French, and I'm like, "What are you doing, croissant?" I'm American, man.
So there's a whole bunch of ironies there. First of all, is Quebec has been looking to try and separate from Canada since about 1976, and they almost did it in 1995. They had a referendum, and so because Quebec was prompting, so for them it's not about money. For them, it's about preserving their language and culture. So they want to be isolated. I'm like, I don't know how separating yourself from the country in a North American continent where America dominates all the business and culture, that you think you're going to keep your French language. It's like much more enshrined in Canada, but whatever, okay. So they wanted to do that. But as a consequence of what they did in 1995, it prompted a ruling from the Supreme Court, because they asked, okay, can Quebec actually separate? And the Supreme Court ruled on it and said, yes, if you have a well-posed question and over half the people vote yes on the referendum question, then divorce proceedings have to start, basically. And so that ruling is applying. And so Alberta could use that. If we actually had a referendum here, that is actually the constitutionally approved way from the Supreme Court of getting out. So it's just like, wow, okay. And so weirdly enough, Quebec and Alberta have been forging some ties because we both want out of this if it goes down that way where the Liberals get back in power.
Because I'm going to be honest, I would love to watch some Burrs and Boom Booms go down in Canada.
Burrs and Boom Booms.
It would be so, I mean, and so this brings up another point, right? So you're like, when Trump makes his claim about trade deficits and things like that, we've been carrying Canada for a little bit, and it just annoys some of the people up here to no end. And I'm like,
it is true though. I mean,
but there's truth to that. So to your point, Pop, I mean, in terms of defense, it's like, look, if you can't, this is difficult for a military man to say. I mean, imagine you're in my country that deliberately underspends on defense spending and completely depends on their southern neighbor for all of their defense. And it's like, it's true. We don't spend hardly anything on our military and completely depend on you guys down there for keeping us safe in this crazy world. And I'm like,
and that's why I have socialized medicine.
It's like, should there be something? Is that part of a negotiation? Yeah, there probably should be. I mean, so that is true. You look at other things too. At the same time, though, Trump was mentioning there's certain trade imbalances.
Time.
On the one hand, true. For example, dairy, eggs, chicken, poultry, that kind of thing. There is an entire. I'm not even going to get into it because God only knows I don't want them knocking on my door. These guys are powerful up here, but there's an entire cabal that takes care of the marketing for all that, so that it is very socialist, and nothing is going to touch that. And so, if you want to sell an American chicken up here, you got a problem because you got to go up against.
The tariffs on dairy alone are over 200%.
And listen, it's all fun and games until we have 10,000 tanks rolling north with all kinds of.
You just want to get it on. You just want to get it on. I know.
But the look on your face, the Canadians would be like holding their beer, like.
Alberta would be like, "Hey, can we ride?"
Yeah. It's funny. Now, on the other hand, certain aspects of it are silly. So, for example, and I think he might be facing this because of that ruling that just came out of the Senate, is that declaring a fentanyl emergency from drugs coming across the northern border is completely specious. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If anything, there's way more drugs coming north from the States coming in the pipeline, and almost every crime committed up here with a handgun was done with a gun that came up here from the States. So if you want to talk about border stuff, yeah.
I'm sure there's a big black market for handguns up there.
Dude,
all the laws.
And so, every time they commit a crime up here, I'm like, so you're right. It was the legal handgun owner who went through all these steps that did that, or it was the guy who got it from the pipeline in the States.
Exactly.
Anyway, all that to say, there's a little bit of nuance to it. But at the end of the day, if you're going to sit there and complain about some other country putting tariffs on your goods, maybe you should look at home first and get your economy sorted out instead of complaining about what else is going on, and get shit sorted out and then negotiate. And that is the way we think out here. And that is why, when this is happening, Danielle Smith was down there with you guys actually trying to make deals and figure stuff out. Meanwhile, in the East, they're being all blowhard about, we're going to do this and we're going to hit back. We're going to do this. I'm like, dudes, you do realize their American economy is like 20 times bigger than ours. And even though they're our biggest trading partner, we're not necessarily that big a percentage of theirs.
No, I think you're 13%.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? So instead of talking tough and all that, why don't you try and solve the problem?
Yeah. It just cracks me up when your new BM, we'll call him that instead of PM, because he's definitely a shit talker, he said that Trump announcing reciprocal tariffs, not punishable tariffs, not punishing tariffs like we're just going to do it to stick it to you, but literally just reciprocal tariffs, meaning what's good for you is obviously good for us. That constituted an act of war, but literally saying that he was going to cut the grid to New England and Michigan and everything, leaving millions of people who have nothing to do with this out of power. That wasn't an act of war?
Well, hang on. This is what would happen.
I'm just saying, because if words are violence...
this is what's going to happen because of the trade war that's going on. In the short term, basically 24 months to 36 months, It's going to impact the United States to a moderate to decent degree. But as time marches along and we start getting our own industry up and rolling, so we don't need to import all of this stuff, the world is going to suffer permanently because we won't be outsourcing all of our goddamn jobs like we used to. We used to have, 30% of our actual GDP was industry here in this country. It's now down to 10%.
Yeah.
So if we bring that up to 30%, hell, let's just take it to 40%. And guess what? The rest of the world is going to be clamoring.
Because inevitably what happens when you get into this sort of a tariff war is, you just like you said, you incentivize domestic production of goods, which in the long run only helps you nationwide.
Yes.
And the leftists don't understand economics. That's why they're leftists. They just think, well, it's going to increase costs. In the short term, yes. But in the long term, you're talking about bolstering an economy from within instead of depending on... Because we say this all the time. Modern women are stupid because they love to look outside themselves at every moment for happiness. It's on you to make me happy. Anything that can be provided for you by somebody else can be taken away.
That's right.
Pure and simple. So it is not smart to be a domestic, a almost solely based on imports. If your economy is built on that, you're fucking up by the numbers.
Well, the left doesn't really understand economics. They never really build anything. They're terrible leaders, and they don't follow their own laws.
No. Well, and like you were saying earlier about them, about the, like, all of a sudden, just because Trump, got reelected down here, all of a sudden they flipped on a dime up in Canada and we're going to go back to the same party that was doing them damage for decades. Hey, take a look at Chicago, Detroit, Baltimore, all of these leftoid-run cities that have been run into the ground. No one has been uplifted by their policies forever and a day, and they keep voting for them anyway.
I think the word you're looking for is ever.
Yeah.
Well,
stupid.
It's disingenuous because it's not explaining things properly, right? It's like, from a purely economic standpoint, in terms of what costs more, yes, tariffs make things cost more. Of course they do. So you don't put on tariffs for a necessarily economic reason. You put them on for a political reason. In this case, bringing more of your industry home because you want to build up your national base better and also protect yourself strategic assets that way because you do more stuff at home. Okay. So this is why I say, we hope that somehow Polyev, who's our conservative guy, gets elected, because he's a guy who's actually trying to find solutions with this. And as opposed to just going, the states is being all greedy and they're doing all this stuff. Well, look, they're looking after their self-interest. So we can look after ours too, but we can do it by making good deals. Why don't we try and see what we can do to help each other out, knowing that they want to protect this? We got to do this. This is the new way. Trump is not, he's not evil. He's just got a different way of doing this. So let's figure out what we're going to do, as opposed to just blowing hard. Like, every time I've heard Polyev talk about what he'd do about the Trump tariffs, it's measured. It's reasonable. He wants to make deals. He wants to figure out how to do stuff. He wants to build up our infrastructure the same way you're talking, and then we can work together again. I don't see what's so difficult about that.
Yeah, because it's up to your government to look after the well-being of your citizens and your economy, and ours is the same way. It is not on us to make the Canadian citizens happy. And that's essentially what we've been doing by allowing, 230% tariffs on dairy, which basically negates the U.S. market on Canadian soil.
Yeah. Well, the left is actually good at producing parasites.
Yes. And they love naming shit for its polar opposite. Affordable Care Act. Need I say more?
Yeah, I think, like I said, in my perfect world, we'd elect our conservative government, we'd work together, and we'd get this thing going and actually make life better for everybody. We don't have to be all acrimonious about this. We can actually put some stuff together, knowing that the best way to make a deal is understanding that someone else is working from their motivated self-interest. How the hell else do you make a deal?
Yeah.
But
so Skid.
All it's done, just let me finish for a second. All it's done with these crazy people is they just want to fight. And I'm like, fight what? Do you understand what you're even talking about? Anyway, okay.
No.
Cool.
So Skid,
these are the panty-fascists. They think they want to fight because they're stupid enough to think that they can win.
Well, and the one last thing about that is these for the same people, and I was mentioning this before, 2 years ago, they were taking down Canadian flags. They're taking down the statues of our founding fathers and going, oh, yeah, we committed genocide. We did this. We did that. You can't put your Canada flag up on Canada Day. Blah, 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 blah.
We did the same shit down here.
Anti-patriotic. But now we're all patriotic and rah-rah Canada because, Trump. I'm you got to be kidding me.
Yeah, the same people.
Where do you guys get the hell off?
The same people down here just crack me up, man.
Anyway, Skid, how many dicks do you have to suck to get elected down there to be the PM?
Well, I've never. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm just curious.
That's one of those questions that they ask you in family court, right? Like, there's no good answer to that, right?
So, if you had a knife in your back and a dick in your ass, which one do you take out first?
So have you stopped beating your?
Take out the knife and cut the dick off.
I'll tell you what you do have to do though. Is you have to win Eastern Canada, which means Ontario and Quebec. That's the only way that you're gonna get elected here, and that's what drives the West crazy. Because the polling is already finished out east. We can all vote here, and it doesn't even matter because the election's already been determined.
So you guys need to get the hell out of there.
It's an electoral college. It just cracks me up how all of a sudden that argument went away after Trump won the popular vote and the electoral college vote. They were talking about abolishing it for years because you had numerous presidents being. Anytime a conservative president was elected, going back, I don't know, and I think just after Reagan, they always lost the popular vote but won the college.
Yeah.
And that's because you have to. It's not an even distribution of power. It's just mob rule when it's nothing but democracy.
Well, I agree. Well, first of all, if they get rid of the electoral college, all of the states in the middle of the country are no longer going to participate because their interests will not be heard, or followed, or even considered.
Yep. If they did that, the next American Civil War would be the breadbasket and then the coasts.
36-38.
Yep. What in the butt, baby?
It'd be 36 to 38 states against all the other ones.
Ugh.
That's not a good setup.
It's interesting because that alignment just keeps going straight north, right? Like if you go north of Montana and North Dakota, you hit Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, and that's your conservative base right there. Whereas you got BC is very much like California, same kind of thing, and then out east, more like your metropolitan eastern states as well. With the exception of the Maritimes. Maritimes don't really count when you get into them.
Yeah, so Congo and New York.
You got BC, butts and cocks.
Butts and cocks.
Actually, you know what BC really stands for is bring cash.
Bring cash.
Because the taxes are it's like California. The taxes are so high to live there, it's ridiculous.
Screw it.
Yeah, the Western Canada is basically made out of, idiot steam from California. In Washington State.
Well, the West Coast, yes.
Yeah, the West Coast. It's just the lunacy and the moron fog just goes north, and it seems to be enveloping your country as well.
Hey, Pop, we have a dude in the chat, the Elder, apparently hasn't tuned in before to know about your theory of the 36 to 38.
All right. So I keep, for the past 8 to 10 years, the number 36 and 38 comes up all the time. I see it in license plates. I notice it on addresses. I know they're very common numbers. I dream about these numbers. I have no idea what they represent other than they have something to do with a conflict that's coming up in the future.
Doesn't a constitutional convention require 36 or 38 states?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And I know there's 12 states which are solid blue.
Yeah.
But 12 states that are solid blue are not going to be able to turn back 38 states that, want them to fall in line.
38 states that embrace their Second Amendment rights instead of, cower in fear from them, that produce most of the natural resources that those 12 blue states depend on for their very livelihoods. Correct. So,
here's the thing, though. Even in those blue states, they're dominated by 1 to 4 cities. The rest of the counties, the rest of those states are solid red.
Yep. It's very true. There's a big divide between urban and rural. And I really see that every time I go down to California. Rural California is nothing like LA.
Watch Grunt Speak live every Tuesday and Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to join Pop for Supporter Sundays, go to redonkulous.com/donate and make a monthly pledge. A link is in the Meat Gazer box.